Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of Poland Daily Travel. The bells are ringing as we tell our story. This is the new town square. The new town, just slightly newer than the old town. It's still several centuries old and contains on the edge of it the oldest church in Warsaw. So what's called the new town is extremely an old town. Older than any town in America, for example, in the United States or South America. You can see that this makes a nice location for defense, and it would have been a fairly secure location. It's located on a bluff above the river. It was also the location of a hospital here. So, not only was there a Red Cross on the top of this, but it's also obviously a church. Of course, the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, bombed it, and 1,000 people were killed in the area of 1,000 people who were there wounded and receiving medical attention, not to mention the other people who may have been sheltering there. So no quarter and no forgiveness, really, for such actions. That took place, a couple of weeks into the Battle of Warsaw. Now, remember that the old town, and this is part of the old town, as I already explained, though it's called the New Town Square. It was only held for a month. It was held for 1 month, that's all. And this was destroyed about halfway through. Let's move on. Maybe it might be worth giving you a view of over by the river. I think you might find that instructive. So come on, let's go there. Okay, I brought you here for specific reasons so that you can see Praga. You see the beach, you see the church in the center of Praga over there, the double steeples, right in the middle of Praga, next to the train station. And you see the beach beyond, that's Praga. Okay, that's where the Russians were supposed to advance to. But Stalin, as soon as the uprising started, after having, intimated that he was going to support it, made sense because they were fighting the Germans, supposedly, but whoever knew what Stalin was up to. One of the most contemptible figures in history. You can see over here is the old town. We're going to be going over there. This is a good vantage point. You can see it's quite a big space. We're on the edge of the new town, or the old town, metro old town, if you will. And the old town is there, right to the south of us. To the north is the citadel. It's a huge fortress. The Germans were in there. It was never taken. That citadel it extends all the way to Żoliborz, the northern suburb which was built in the interwar years. It was just villages before the war. Okay, so we're here right on the northern edge of the old town area. And beyond that, across the street, just on a quarter of a mile away, is the citadel, which runs then for a couple of miles, 3 kilometers, all the way to Żoliborz. This is one of the biggest fortresses the Russians built. Not quite as big as the one in Brest, but a big one. Now, it wasn't just that the Russians stopped, you see. It wasn't just that they stopped their advance and allowed the Germans to reinforce from the west with some of the biggest bands of cutthroats you've ever heard of in your life. Prisoners let out of jail, so many of them, so that they could come and fight. It sounds familiar to some of the things going on in Ukraine today. They also stopped flying their Air Force. The Russians had a perfectly capable Air Force, bigger than the German Air Force. at the time, much more effective, because they were manufacturing planes and tanks at an astounding rate in the last couple of years of the war. So the Germans were totally outmanned in terms of machinery, just not as good at the troop movements and not as well led as the Germans were. But so Stalin said, well, gosh, there's a bit too much resistance for us to advance. We really can't. Churchill begged him, let us at least land our planes on your airfields so they don't have to fly from Italy to Warsaw and then back over all this German territory, sitting ducks. No. Such a great ally. Can't help you do that, Stalin said. Right. Roosevelt has a lot to answer for here, but he was old and sick. Now, and I say that as an American, I say it, it's there in the books. Roosevelt could be a very tricky fellow. Now, not only that, so there are no planes from Russia flying over, so it's open season. Stalin basically says, destroy the Poles so that I can take over after the war. I have no intention of helping them unless I absolutely have to. And there you are. So the old town at the mercy of the Russian bombing. It's still quite a big area, and remember the Germans only had about 30,000 troops here in the end. That is not a huge force to cover such a large area, and effectively they couldn't until they forced the Poles to surrender at the end of the uprising. So Germans here bombing Poles in the old town for 1 month until they had to escape to the center. Russians, several kilometers away, halted, didn't advance. There was a German attack, but they could have easily outflanked the Germans. They just didn't. Could have bombed them. They just didn't. They stayed over there and did nothing to relieve Warsaw. Unforgivable. An unforgivable crime. And doing the same thing today. Same Russian kind of practice, right out of the German handbook. So, as we see in Mariupol, and as we see using convicts and private soldiers, privateers, basically pirates, to assault a country today. Hasn't changed much, has it, when you put a dictator in charge. Anyway, on the light side, the war's been over for a long time. That's all I've got for you today. And, I mean, the Warsaw Uprising, the Second War. On the not-so cheerful side, we have another war going on today, and hopefully the results will be, and are looking to be, a little better, at least so far. So, see you tomorrow night. I'm Will Richardson, talking about the Warsaw Uprising, and we're in Metro Old Town, if you will.